Hi everybody, welcome to today's Torah class, the second in a series about Mitzvot commandments. Today we're going to discuss Kabbalah, or Kabbalah, however you want to pronounce it, Mysticism and Mitzvot. And Professor Raphael forgot to bring his red string for everyone, so it might not be as effective as it could have been. I could ask you to pass this to Professor Raphael. Thank you. So last time we spoke about reasons, or possible reasons, for the commandments, why God commanded us all the commandments in the Bible, 613 in total. So I wanted to speak about a little bit about the Kabbalistic understanding of what commandments are. But obviously to do that, we need some introduction to what Kabbalah, what Jewish mysticism is. I'm using the word mysticism, even though that is not a proper translation of the word Kabbalah, but just because that is the word that is used, I guess, that everyone uses for Kabbalah to translate it. The literal word Kabbalah comes from the Hebrew word lekabel, which means to receive, because Kabbalah was always a transmitted, orally, wisdom. And you could only know it if it was transmitted and you received it from a previous master. So therefore, it became known as Kabbalah, as something which you received. So if you have on page 1, I just have bolded in a little box the basic names and history of Kabbalah. So the basic book of Kabbalah is called the Zohar. Zohar literally means splendor, but more than that, it means like when something is so full of light that it shines forth. Right? It is, I guess, radiates. That would be another good translation. That book, according to tradition, was written by the Rabbi of the Talmud, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived approximately 100 of the Common Era. He was persecuted by the Romans. According to tradition, he was asked what he thought about the Roman government. He said a very disparaging remark, and the Romans were out to kill him. He ran to hide in a cave, and that cave was somewhere near in the Galilee, which is where, again, after the Roman destruction of the temple in the year 70 of the Common Era, basically Jewish settlement moved up north to what's called the Galilee. Caesarea or Caesarea, depending on how you pronounce it, was where the Roman seat of the government was. And basically anywhere up north in Israel is where the Jewish settlement was. So in the city near Meron, that is where he lived in a cave. So he subsided almost nothing. Tradition has he had a miraculous brook and tree that sustained him. And there, because he was so secluded from the world, was where he taught, understood the secrets of the Zohar. Okay, all good and fine. The next anyone hears of the Zohar is in the year, literally in the mid 13th century. Rabbi Moshe de Leon, a Spanish rabbi, published it. Now, many scholars, including Gershon Sholem, who was in modern Jewish history, the authoritative opinion and professor of Kabbalah at Hebrew University, he was of the opinion that Moshe de Leon authored it and only attributed it to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And this has been a debate for hundreds of years, whether it was actually written by Shimon Bar Yochai or it was written by some Spanish mystic, Moshe de Leon, and only attributed. Okay, that is not the topic of our lecture, but just to throw that out there. And then came along, but if you ever tried to read the Zohar, it's very esoteric and very hard to read, and it's not written. It's like a stream of conscious. A lot of it is a commentary on the Bible, but it's not ordered. It's not written well to understand. So there are concepts that are hard to understand. Came along Rabbi Moshe Cordovero of Sefid, Sfas, who we call the Ramak after his name, RMC or RMK, and he basically systemized all Kabbalistic teachings in one book. He pointed out, and this was the difficulty, that basically everything in the Zohar discussed the sefirot. Now the sefirot that's the essence of Kabbalah. So if you take a look at the page 4, I'm sure there's like a little picture. You might have seen this at some point or another. in any of your travels in mysticism. This is I don't want to say the basics, but this is the basics of Kabbalah, is that there are emanations or different levels of God relating to the world. We'll get into that a little more. And each of them have different names, and knowing that is basically knowing everything about Kabbalah and what it's supposed to be. We'll get into it. It's Hebrew and English. Hebrew-English translated and transliterated. So if you just take if you would like, the top one, in Hebrew it says Keter, underneath it's just transliterated into English letters, Keter, and on the side it's translated as crown, because that is what Keter means, and then it's explained. So for all the 10 sefirot, there are 4 words, Hebrew word, English translated, and then trying to explain what it means. So we're going to get there eventually, but what Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the Ramak, did was he basically systemized it, and he explained each, he took page 1 of the Zohar, page 10, page 20, page 87, and he showed, okay, that's all talking about number 1, and then he page 6, page 8, and he systemized everything together to make it understandable. And even so, it was still pretty much hidden. Right? It was left to a very limited group of people. Right after he died, the most famous Kabbalist ever came to Seifin, to Sfas. I'm back to page 1. His name was Rabbi Isaac Luria, and he's popularly called Ari. Now, Rabbi Isaac Luria, it's fascinating. He was born in Egypt, but he was Rabbi Yitzchak Ashkenazi. That tells you that they singled him out. He was born in Sephardic countries, Egypt, and went to Israel, but he was of European descent, so that became his last name, Ashkenazi, because that's how you define someone. He came. He was born in Jerusalem. It was actually to Egypt, but to Seifid, and he came on the day of that Ramak died, and many saw that as a heavenly sign that he would be he was the next. Right, he was the next teacher of Kabbalah. He only lived for 2 years in Seifin, teaching. He only 2 years, and then a horrible plague basically wiped out the Jewish community in Seifin, with his main disciple, Rabbi Chaim Vital, running to Damascus, where he's buried till today, unless it's been destroyed, but he was buried in Damascus. And so the whole period of Kabbalistic flowering in Seifid was a very short period, but until this day, if you ever had a chance to visit Israel, Seifid, as you know, is the seat, or claims to be the seat of Jewish mysticism, but with the acknowledgement that it was very limited in time. Everything we have in Kabbalah today is through the teachings of the Ari. He was the one who taught us basically everything. Now, still, Kabbalah would have been like a very unknown or very limited branch of Judaism, teachings of Judaism, until the Hasidic movement. The Hasidic movement, starting in the mid-1700s by the Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, he popularized it and permitted it to be taught to the masses. This is the first time in the mid-1700s that it started to become something taught to the masses. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know. We might know about it, but it wouldn't have been popular. And it wouldn't have been popular, that people wouldn't have known about it. But he popularized. So that's just a basic history of, I guess, the names to know of Kabbalah. Now, there is if you take a look at the third source, the Share Zohar, which is like it's a book on the Zohar quoting the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordovero. It says there, very interesting, that at some point, and now it's hard to read the dates into the Zohar, but at some point, in some epoch, it says, this wisdom will become revealed. It predicts itself that this will be hidden and then revealed. So today, I don't want, this is being videoed and recorded, and I don't want to get in trouble with anyone. So why are we allowed to discuss these topics? Because the Zohar itself said at a certain later period in history, and according to almost all opinions we're past that, the wisdom of the Zohar will become revealed to everyone. So that is why it is now acceptable and popular to speak about these topics. Now, caveat. In Psalm, Tehillim, Psalm 25, verse 14, on the bottom of page 1, it says, "The secret of the Lord is with those who fear Him, and His covenant is to let them know it." And the Radak, who was a early medieval rabbi in Provence. Provence is the old name for the south of France. In medieval times, today we have France and then Spain, right? France borders Spain. In those days, the countries weren't so set, but you had France, which was northern France, and you had what we call south of France, was its own country or own area called Provence or Provence, and then you had Castile and Aragon and all the Spain, what we call Spain. So the Radak says, God will only reveal the secrets of the Torah to those people who fear Him. For if a person is immersed in the pursuit of wisdom, but does not have awe of God and does not fully observe His commandments, God will not reveal the secrets to him. So there's like a caveat in the secret. So again, it's clear. There are secrets of God. That's what the author of Tehillim Zom says. And he says, but it only goes to those people who fear Him. And fearing Him means following whatever God says, ostensibly. Right? That would make logical sense. So throughout the generations, this was taking a little bit more of a stronger terms, is that if you're not fearful of studying this, then you don't deserve to study it. It's like a catch-22. You have to not want to study it to study it. If you really want to study it, then you're not really fearful of it, so don't study it. Only when you're fearful enough not to study it, then you should study it. It's like a catch, it's like a circular logic. Because of the esoteric teachings and because of the possibility to really mess up, therefore people were always, the only way to study it is with the trepidation not to study it. And then you can study it. It's like a very funny thing. If you think you can understand it, then we don't want you to understand it because then you think you got it. We want you to approach it knowing that you really shouldn't be approaching it, therefore you can approach it. That's a very interesting way to teach about wisdom. Now on one hand we're telling you it's a good thing for you to study, but only if you think you're not really holding by studying it. Interesting. I think it's very interesting. Why is it so? We'll turn the page here. So before I get to why it's so, I just want to share with you two sources about actually studying it. Actually, I'm going to skip a little bit. I'm going to skip to where it says Babylon, the third source of page 2, the Babylonian Talmud. This is, I would say, there are very few Talmud, which is not very few references to Kabbalah or the esoteric teachings. This is one of the sources. 4 sages entered the orchard. The orchard was a way that the Talmud esoterically referred to the teachings, the secrets of the Torah. 4 of them: Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, the other, which is a derogatory reference to someone whose name was Elisha ben Avuya, and Rabbi Akiva. You probably heard the name Rabbi Akiva. Okay, so these are all scholars of the 2nd century of the Common Era. Rabbi Ben Azai gazed and died. Ben Zoma gazed and went mad. The other gazed and cut saplings, meaning he cut branches off the tree, which is a funny way of saying something, which means heresy. We'll see why in a second. And only Rabbi Akiva emerged unscathed or complete, as it would be. So what does this mean? So the Maharsha, a rabbi, a Polish rabbi of the 16th century, explained like this: Ben Azai gazed and died. His soul was drawn with such great love and genuine attachment to the spiritual entities that it left his body, never to return. This is an exalted level. Ben Zoma gazed and went mad. He was not as solidly enough prepared or as calm his mind as Ben Azai. So when he gazed at a clearer light than his mind could fathom, the matters became confused in his mind, and his mind was confounded like that of an injured person who does not understand things clearly. Elisha ben Avuya, the other, thought there were 2 powers, meaning 2 deities, God and good and evil, and that is what he splits saplings. It means he cut the branches from the roots. I mean, that's a talmudic euphemism for separating God from this universe, which means he in a way, that's idolatry, according to the Talmud. And last but not least, Rabbi Akiva achieved perfection and was able to perceive. What does this teach us? in a nutshell, if we could sum up all of the goals of what Kabbalah means to teach us, this warning or story explains it all. The story is, in this story, 4 people try to learn this topic. It can either make you so holy, you can't live in this world anymore. It can make you so confused that you can't live in this world anymore. It can make you so confused that you can't understand really about God, and then you just make up crazy stuff, which are not true. Or you get it. So you got what a 4 chance. So what does this mean? It means all of Kabbalah. We're going to read the last one. Now, this person's name I mentioned last time. I didn't bring it before, but he is also one of the most important people. His name is the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, who I told you last time, because of the anti-Kabbalah backlash after the false messiah of the late 1600s, he was persecuted for his teaching of Kabbalah. The entire wisdom of Kabbalah is only to understand how the supreme will governs. For what purpose he created all these different creatures, what he wants for them, what will come at the end of all the cycles of the universe, and how all these strange cycles are to be explained. So basically the Ramchal, again, Italian rabbi of the late 1600s, early 1700s, says if you want to sum up everything, is how there's an interaction between God and this world. Because you could read all of the books of the Bible, and you won't get that. You get directives from God. God said, do this, do that. Or the stories of where at one point God interacted with humans. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, forefathers, or if you get to, the kings and the prophets, you get a lot, but you don't have how Baruch, Fogel, and God interact. There's none of it. So you could take the Bible very dry, a book of law, book of set of rules, and you don't have to, in a way, God doesn't have to be part of the picture. Kabbalah came along to, in a way, bridge that gap. But it's a very, very big gap and a very narrow bridge, to paraphrase a famous song. Because you have a creator, God, and you have the created, us, and somehow they interact. It's hard to understand. Or the infinite is connecting to the finite. So all of that is, it's like they always say, in physics, right? A person living in 2 dimensions, living on a line, interacting with a 3-dimensional. You can't understand this. If you're a 2-dimensional being, you can't understand what a 3-dimensional being is like. All the more so if you have an infinite and a finite, it's very difficult to interact or comprehend. So Kabbalah is to give us that wisdom and that understanding how to comprehend in our finite world how that connects to the infinite. So that is why those 4 people, of those 4, 1 got it right, but 3 didn't. 1 said, you know what? This world is nothing. I don't want this finite world. I want to be connected to the infinite. So his soul became infused with spirituality, and he died. Then what does dying mean? Dying means his soul and his body can no longer interact. Because we all believe that every human being has a soul, and every human being has a body. And without that life force of a soul, the body is lifeless. Literally, it's just a body. It's just cells, right? What gives a person a life is the soul, this connection. It's very esoteric, but so if a person's soul desires so much more, he'll say, this body is not worth it. It's not something, I want to be so much more. We have that today a little bit. There are people into spirituality who believe you can't fast. You have to fast all day, or you have to be celibate, or you have to sit there and meditating. And that's all good things, because there is a concept of spirituality is this world is not spiritual. So I want to transcend this world to something else. But then you become like Ben Azai. You leave the world and you don't stay part of the world. or you become Ben Zoma, you get confused. You can't understand how these two worlds go together, so you just always confused. Or the worst case scenario is you said, you know what? God's there, I'm here, there's a separation, you cut saplings, you cut branches, and you disconnect this world from God. All three approaches are incorrect. The correct approach, and that's what Kabbalah is meant, what we believe Kabbalah is meant to teach, is how to connect and how to live in this world and yet be connected to God. So that's why I titled this lecture, Kabbalah Mitzvot, a marriage made in heaven. It's what Kabbalah does, it retakes, it has a view of all of the commandments, and of all the stories, and of everything in the Torah, which you didn't know is a way to connect to God, and explains that how it connects you to God. So it's a restatement or a reevaluation of everything taught in a new light, in the light of interaction with God, in the infinite. And that's very, very difficult, because, all right, before I had this lovely water, which helps me, nourishes me, helps me speak, all things that regular water does, I made a blessing. I made a blessing to thank God for the water. Now, I'm still drinking water, and it's a regular, mundane human thing, but somehow in my blessing, I'm connected to infinite. But it's hard to see, because it's still water. I didn't go flying anywhere. I'm not claiming this water will now cure the world of all diseases. No, it's regular water. But somehow, by connecting, I can connect to God through water. It's a very difficult concept. So you all know that there's a thing called a Kabbalah Center. You've heard of it? You've heard of Madonna. You've heard of Ashton Kutcher, who are big devotees of Kabbalah. And usually, and I had the experience once of flying on a plane with a number of devotees who went to Israel for Yom Kippur. And they were it was a lovely family from Texas, non-Jewish, who are devotees of the Kabbalah Center. They went for Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, to Israel. And I learned so much from at least of what the Kabbalah Center, what people generally think of Kabbalah from that, 12-hour flight stuck together, say next to each other. But they were telling me, so they have Kabbalah water. And that the Kabbalah water, did you know the Kabbalah water, I think their claim was, lowered the radiation in Chernobyl. I was like, you're missing the point. If you think that spirituality can be so palpable and tangible that it will somehow lessen the uranium breaking down, who are you kidding? You're out of your mind. But on the other hand, if you don't believe that there's ever any connection in this world to something spiritual, and that simple water can be unbelievably spiritual and holy, then you're missing the point also. But if you really think that some water is going to be the elixir of life, you're also a little bit, That is the difficulty. That is the inherent difficulty that we find when we learn these topics. So now, I want to just as an introduction, before I even get to what I really want to say, introduction. So, the 10 sefirot. Now, let's give a little bit of a. There was at one point, or especially in Spain, when Kabbalah was beginning to be revealed, a very strong backlash, Jewish backlash. Very strong. And part of that is, if you read, the main dogmatic statement in the Bible of Jewish faith is, "Hear, O Israel, right? The Lord is the God, the Lord is one. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad." Right? If I would say that would be the dogmatic statement in the Bible, that would be it. The Lord is one. Oneness, unity. Maimonides, all of the philosophers speak about this concept all over. All of a sudden, comes Kabbalah and starts talking about 10 levels of understanding God. Right? And automatically, all the philosophers and all the rationalists and all of the previous scholars are like, what are you talking about? 10? We have God is one, unity, right? That's the main statement. You're introducing some foreign concept. And it was a big battle. And the Kabbalists and the non-Kabbalists, unfortunately, I wouldn't say did battle, but they, with the pen and with the quill and with the ink and with they would write against each other and argue vociferously that each one was crazy and didn't really get Judaism. That's what we do. We argue a lot. Right, Professor Eiffel?
Yes.
So that being said, I just want to, you should know that such a thing exists. So the Ramchal lists, I think this is based on Kabbalah, the 10 levels. Now, what does that mean? Again, I don't know the answer. I mean, no one knows the answer. But we'd have to study together for a long time. But if you take a look, this is right intro to Kabbalah, which I would try to do a little bit. If you take a look at the picture on page 4, I don't know if you realize, it sort of looks like a human. Sort of. There's right. Every human's got a body. Everyone's got 2 arms and 2 legs. Everyone's got a head above them. So if you take a look, there's the 3 on top that are not colored. Right? That's called wisdom. The crown, the wisdom, and understanding. That refers to the head, everything from the neck and above. You got like the head, the wisdom is like say, would say your brain. Sorry, the crown is like your brain, and then chachma bina, the wisdom and understanding, like the eyes or something like that. I don't know. And then you have hands and feet, and then the main part of the body. And that was also controversial, and is that we're describing emanations of God in human body terms. Because, and this is the point that I'd like to make today, is that Kabbalah tries to teach you that every one of your actions, every one of everything that you do, think, everything can become godly. And that somehow you can connect to the infinite through your finite actions. And more than that, we can understand the infinite by thinking of the finite. So, let's just go down, we go back to the list or go down. We have crown, wisdom, and understanding. Kindness, power, splendor, eternity, beauty, foundation, majesty. Those are wonderful words. Those are such nice words. They evoke, again, the problem with all good words, they evoke pre-existing thoughts in your head. If I'd ask you, just for argument's sake, what is kindness? You all know what kindness is. You have a picture, maybe you have a picture for Thanksgiving week, of someone helping the poor, of someone giving to charity, someone volunteering their time. We all have many concepts of kindness. The problem with studying these topics are, in a way, you might have to forget everything you know about a word and understand it in its infinite sense. So, for example, kindness, in Hebrew is the word chesed. Okay, chesed. The verse says, that I had to bring it here, is Olam chesed yibaneh. God created the world with chesed. Created the world. So chesed, it always, in a way, is the we would say the sefirot, or the channel of creation. Now, all that is in itself could take us years or at least weeks to understand what that means, how that applies. What does that teach us about God? That His creation of the world means He wants to give. That when we do kindness, we are creating in this world. There's so much to be learned from. That means you go to someone who doesn't have a meal, you give them a meal. I was listening to the radio yesterday, just to give you an example. I listened to the radio yesterday, and it was someone's, I don't know why, just a Sunday, they had like a slow news day, although never a slow news day, and someone was walking past a homeless person in Manhattan, saw they didn't have shoes, took their shoes off. Someone, you heard about this, right? You also heard this, right? And then someone took a picture, or it was on Instagram and Facebook, I don't know exactly. So, and then they had a wonderful quote. It says, I felt so bad for the person. Can you imagine? I have shoes. I have in my closet at home, I got who knows amount of shoes. This person doesn't have shoes. I gave them my shoes. Now I'm going to say something crazy. That's not kindness. Why is that not kindness? You felt bad. You didn't wake up in the morning and say, I want to create someone. There's a lacking in this world. There are people out there who cannot walk without shoes. I'm going to change the world today. You didn't do that. You walked by, you felt bad, and you were guilty. You felt bad. I just spent $785 on Stuart Weitzman shoes, and I feel bad. So I'm going to give the person my shoes that I'm wearing now. You didn't create anything. So what happens is, but if I would ask you, before I told you my crazy radical thoughts, of course that's a kind person. And that was the point of the news story. So here you have that, what the problem with learning these things are that you have to take a step back from this world to appreciate it. To appreciate all these concepts of how God interacts with the world with words and concepts that we know, you have to take a step back, think of it from a godly standpoint. And then God the right in the morning said, I really feel bad that there's no world. Well, he didn't feel bad for anyone, but he got up in the morning and said, he got up in the morning, but he said, I want to create something. I want a people, I want a world of happiness, and etc. So he created a world. So that's a whole different type of kindness. Wisdom, right? There's certain types of wisdom that you receive from your wonderful professors. That's a type of wisdom that's received. Then there's the wisdom where you have forethought. Some of you, I don't know, first year, second year, third year, if I'd ask you right now, tell me what you plan on being in 10, 15 years, well, you're like, I don't know. First, I got to finish law school, got to pass the bar, got to get a job somewhere, then hopefully, right? But if I tell you, no, tell me the exact steps, 15 years you want to be, like some of our famous graduates, let's say you want to be a politician. I don't know anyone want to be, but let's say you want to be a politician. So there are concrete steps. You got to probably hang out with the right people, and you got to probably go into the right area of law, probably work for the government a little bit. I don't know what they are, but, right? So then you'd have like a 15-year plan. That's when we say wisdom, we don't mean knowledge, we mean wisdom. Wisdom is how all the steps lead to goals, or how actions lead to further actions. And then understanding, right, is a whole other thing. So when we do talk about Kabbalah, we're always talking about these different ways of understanding God's interaction with the world at its root source, and trying to remove our prejudices of the concepts and understanding them in its essence. Now you understand why it's a very difficult thing to learn. Now, after having said all that, for half an hour, a little bit too much of an introduction, why did I posit in the title of the lecture that Mitzvot, commandments, and Kabbalah are a great marriage made in heaven? So luck would have it that it's relevant to the portion of the Torah that we read in the synagogue on Saturday. It's a famous story. Jacob stole the blessings from his brother. Isaac, the father, was going to bless Esav, the older brother, who, unbeknownst to him, had really sold it. So he wasn't stealing it because he had sold it previously, many years ago, 50 years earlier, to his younger brother, the firstborn rights. And Jacob then, dressed up as Esav, went to his father and got the blessings. When his father realized, you know what, you're right, you're right, you bought it, fair and square, it's yours. But your brother hates your guts. So you got to go. You got to run away. Not run away, leave the country entirely, go to what's Syria today, Damascus, whatever it is, and run to your uncle's house and marry your first cousins. First cousins, get married. Okay? That's the story. There's a little story in the story. Jacob leaves. He leaves Beersheba, right? Genesis 28. He leaves Beersheba and goes to Haran. Haran is somewhere in Syria. And he arrived at the place. Okay. He lodged there because the sun had set. He took some of the stones, placed them around his head. He lied down and he dreamed. And behold, the ladder set up on the ground that its top reached to heaven. And behold, angels of God were ascending and descending upon it. Okay. A little short story. Not so relevant to the main story of the forefathers, but it's there. Story of Jacob's ladder. Jacob's ladder has always been interpreted, because of this, as the beginnings of Kabbalah. There's actually a very big rabbi today who lives in Jerusalem who his book is called in English, Ascending Jacob's Ladder. And if you take, I think also, let me not try to remember. Okay, well, Ascending Jacob's Ladder. So I was using. If you take a look here on the bottom of page 3, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto again explains the significance of the dream of Yaakov as Jacob. In his dream, Yaakov saw angels climbing up a ladder and then climbing down. Now, if I would ask you, where are angels located? You would have told me, heaven. So what should angels, if you see a ladder with angels, which way should they be going first? Down first, right? If they're starting in heaven, they go down, and then they go back up. So why does it say the angels were ascending and then descending? It should be reversed, descending and ascending. One of those, minutia of the Bible that, the rabbis like to nitpick. He explains that Yaakov's dream represents the power of man to affect the cosmos, which is a power that God implanted in the creation of the world. Man's action on earth creates spiritual reverberations in the heavenly spheres, and God responds to those spiritual reverberations by affecting the world accordingly. That means the angels go up and they come down is a way of it's like you ever try to climb a rope in gym class, right? The rope, and you shake it and it creates a wave that goes up and comes down. So that's what it is. Our actions create the spiritual reverberations up and then back down. When man acts correctly and sends positive spiritual energy up to heaven, that represented by the angels going up the ladder, God responds by sending positive energies back down to earth, represented by the angels coming down the ladder. And conversely, if a man acts incorrectly and sends negative reverberations up to heaven, God responds by sending negative spiritual energies back down to earth. So, Jacob's ladder is used as the paradigm or as the example for this concept, which I'm going to sum up, is that Kabbalah is on one hand understanding God. It's also understanding how our actions influence the world in a spiritual way. So therefore, commandments aren't, like we said last time, commandments are to make you a better person. God wants you to grow. God wants you to be a complete person. That's very earthly, right? You want to make sure to get rid of all your bad tendencies. That's very earthly. Kabbalah says, no, take a look at commandments and look at it as God said, I want you to influence the world at large. But I don't say the world at large. I want you to influence all the spirituality. I created this world so that you can have an influence. And that is why that's the picture here. There's always the duality, and that's the problem when you can make a mistake. That on one hand we're describing God, on the other hand we're describing man's influence on God. But last I checked, right? I'm a parent. If your kid starts telling you what to do, you're in trouble, right? The parent's supposed to tell the kid what to do. But on the other hand, a child is supposed to influence how the parent acts, but he shouldn't tell the parent what to do. So that is like, if you think that you could force God's hand through Kabbalah, you got it wrong. He's still God. He's the creator. If you think you can understand and influence, you can. That's a very fine line. It's a very fine line where the kid deserves a punishment or reward, or when the kid demands a punishment and reward. And that is the difficult nature of this topic. So I just want to end off. Hope I did it justice. I don't really know, but if you take a look, well, we basically did everything. If you take a look back to page 3, the Ramchal, so again the same Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the second source. The Master, blessed be He, has arranged that man means humans' actions affect the spiritual sources of everything in the world. Not only man's deed have this effect, but even his words and thoughts. And that is the mission statement of Kabbalah, is that every human in their actions doesn't only affect themselves, they affect the cosmos. By understanding what God is, how He interacts with this world, we can then understand how we as humans can affect or interact with Him. And that is what Kabbalah is meant to teach us. Now, you understand that the pitfalls inherent in thinking that you could force God, or you could get the secrets and put a red string in your hand, and all of a sudden you will, who knows what will happen. Or you could drink water that some Kabbalah's blessed, and now no more uranium depleting in Chernobyl, or who knows what. There's a whole study here, and that we don't have time, but that is, I want to hopefully give you a little bit of a taste of what this is. Thank you all for joining us. I'd like to invite everyone, and everyone you know, and everyone they know, in 2 weeks' time from today, we're having our Hanukkah party at this time, December 7th, 2 weeks from today, December 7th, at 12:30 in the FCR BDR. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of good food. We'll have sufganiyot donuts. We'll have chocolate coins. We'll have everything good for Hanukkah. We'll have a good time. So I hope you join us all in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful day. Any questions? I spoke very quick. Yeah.
Would you say that Kabbalah more or less promotes the power of positive thinking?
That's a very loaded question. I don't know what you mean by positive thinking. I'm going to try to answer the question. The question was, does Kabbalah promote positive thinking? The positive thinking that Kabbalah promotes is the thinking that you have unbelievable abilities, and your actions are unbelievably important. Because, I'm sorry, what's your name? Jolivette. So you're one of a few hundred law school students in the building, one of a few 100,000 lawyers in the country. Who are you? But you walk into admissions and you see this. That's where my office is. And you see the sign. Who says the world needs one more lawyer? Right? How does the sign go? Right? I pass out every day. Does the world need thank you, Avi. Does the world really need another lawyer? And the positive thinking is that in your actions, whether it's smiling to someone, whether it's helping someone, whether it's thinking thoughts, saying the right words, doing the right actions, your actions transcend yourself and are so much greater. So in that respect, it's the most positive thinking you can imagine. You want to know, there's a big positive thinking that, I feel I'm going to pass a test, and without any basis? No, right? That's not real positive thinking, that's just foolishness. But positive thinking that the abilities and the results and the ramifications of who you are infinitely important because you're created and you're meant to do that, then yes. So I don't know if that was your question, but I hope I answered it. Okay. That's what I didn't. The next source on page 3 is a Jew must never say to himself, "Who am I? And what difference do my actions make anyway?" Rather, a person must understand and internalize that no detail of his every deed, word, or thought is ever lost. On the contrary, his deeds are exceedingly powerful and effective. Each one in its kind ascends to higher world as repercussions there. In reality, when you study the Kabbalah over and over, you understand that a blessing on water ascends to this level, and a good deed of charity affects that level, and studying Torah affects a different level, and the commandment to keep the Sabbath. Everyone has, right? That's the details, the nitty gritty. What you could spend your whole life studying is understanding the nitty gritty of Kabbalah. Which actions correspond to which world, etc., etc., etc. But as a general rule, that's what we try to present today, a general whole. Anything else? Nothing?
I like that answer.
Okay. Okay, everyone. Have a wonderful day.